There's no promise won't stay kept. I won't stay told. No.
Living in the Portland area comes with a lot of perks. Nature at one's doorstep, mild climate, and lots of friendly people, to name just a few. There's so many cool things to be thankful for here that one would be hard-pressed to create a top 10 list. I haven't created such a list, but if I did, the vast array of world-class artisanal bakers, butchers, fishmongers, and produce vendors would definitely make my top 3. People here have been doing the farm-to-table thing long before it was a thing. And one can get a meal from a food cart for just a few bucks. That's as good or better than most fine dining restaurants in the rest of the world. None of this has happened by accident, of course. It's the result of amazing people pursuing their passion to produce and prepare incredible food. What's happening here? What's the scene in Portland? The Picnic House caters primarily to the business crowd for lunch and theater goers for dinner, with a few tourists thrown in for good measure. But its food is worthy of a drive from the suburbs as a destination location. My lunch companion today is Camus Davis, former food writer and magazine editor. In 2009, she took a trip to France to study whole animal butchery and charcuterie, and what she experienced there changed her life. She began working at a local meat counter and soon founded the Portland Meat Collective, with the goal of bringing the kind of transparent, hands-on educational experience to Portland that she had enjoyed in France. I was once bitten by a spider in my sleep. I woke up, caught it, and tossed it outside. I don't like to kill things without good reason, not even insects. That's just who I am. Paradoxically, I am also a carnivore. I haven't always been one. I've spent more than half my adult life a vegetarian, until my body told me it had enough. I originally stopped eating meat despite my caveman-like desire for it, because the way we do meat in America is wrong. First of all, we eat too much of it. We do bad things to the environment making it, and we often mistreat the animals we raise for it. It's easy to disconnect ourselves from that reality as we buy the neatly packaged cuts in our local grocery store. They say knowledge is power, and the fine folks at the Portland Meat Collective would love to empower your meat intelligence quotient. The Meat Collective are a bunch of butchers, chefs, and other meat-loving aficionados that offer no-holds-barred classes on how to do meat right. Their approach is holistic, encompassing raising, slaughter, butchering, and of course, delicious meal preparation. It's the brainchild and passion project of Camus Davis, author of Killing It in Education, a humorous and heartfelt memoir that chronicles her journey from top-flight journalist to conscientious butcher. Today, Camus and I are talking meat and having lunch at the Picnic House, across from the Schnitzer Auditorium in downtown. Everything at the Picnic House is excellent, but my personal favorite is their grilled cheese with tomato soup. They're both awesome, with or without bacon. So why meat?
So I was a magazine editor for 10 years or so before I did this, and was a food writer. And I found that meat was the most mysterious ingredient. I'd interview chefs about what was on the plate, and they could tell me where the strawberries came from and where the maybe where the blueberries and the lettuce came from, but when it came to meat, it came from a distributor out of a van, and it was already cut up and it was in a box.
Right.
And I found that as a journalist to be kind of odd. Like, why don't we know? But of course, we don't know because we don't want to know.
The best learning is experiential, and that's the approach taken for classes offered at the Portland Meat Collective.
So we teach people from beginning to end how an animal gets turned into meat. So how is it slaughtered? And we teach humane slaughter. How does a whole pig get turned into bacon and ham and pork chops? And also then, what do you do with the trotters and the head and the bones and the skin?
All the good
That's
stuff.
all food. But in our country, we tend to think of it not as food.
Right.
And so we end up raising a lot more animals just to meet our demand for pork chops and bacon. Our goal is to bring consumers and also farmers and chefs and butchers into the processes by which meat gets to their tables. So slaughter classes, whole animal butchery classes, and then whole animal utilization classes.
Really?
Yeah, so how do you use the whole animal, not just the pork chop and the ham and that kind of thing. And the meat that I tend to like to eat is good, clean, and fair. So good, meaning it tastes good. Fair, meaning, you know, who raises it, how are they paid, and also how are the animals treated as well. Clean, meaning, you know, what went into the animal that got turned into the meat that we're eating. So was it fed antibiotics? Like was it a cow that was fed grain even though they can't digest it, or was it fed grass? In general, the meat that we eat in America has very little flavor and very little texture. We raise our animals really young. We feed them all the same grain. And so you don't have a lot of nuance in flavor, but if you take a truly grass-fed beef, you have so much flavor and so much texture, much more
it looks completely
possibilities.
different.
Yeah,
It's a different color to it.
Right.
Everything. Wow.
Absolutely.
So if you take one of their classes, and I highly recommend that you do, expect not only to learn how to make amazing food, expect to also get a fair amount of blood under your nails in the process.
We've, as a consumer base, have started to become a little more concerned about where meat comes from, but we don't want to pay too much for it.
Exactly.
But we don't know what good meat is or where. So creating this kind of education, I think, is
If people
key.
knew what good meat tasted like, they'd be willing to pay a little more for it.
Well, hopefully. And then the other thing about good meat is that it's usually older, it has more fat, it has more flavor, so you don't have to eat as much of it. So if you pay more for it, you don't have to eat as much. But if you buy the kind of industrialized meat we have now, it's, you know, kind of, you have to eat a big steak in order to feel sated and to feel like you're getting flavor. And so it's cheap, but you buy more anyways.
Sure.
By bringing people closer to those processes, I'm not trying to get people to get all excited about meat. I'm getting them to think about it.
Making great food while becoming a better person? Delicious. Nestled in the Kearns district of northeast Portland lies a market. A really, really cool market. And you need to check it out. Providore Fine Foods is a collection of specialty food merchants, each of whom passionately strive to deliver the very best items within their respective niche. They include Pasta Works and their Mediterranean rotisserie Arrosto, the Flying Fish Company and Oyster Bar, the Meatmongers, the Rubinet Produce Market, Little T Baker, and Hillary Horvath Flowers. Whenever I visit the place, it brings back the feelings of wonder I enjoyed as a very young lad, when going to the grocery store with my mother was an amazing adventure of sights and sounds and aromas that always ended with a special treat. I expect today to be no different as I take a tour of the Flying Fish Company and Oyster Bar with its proprietor, Leif Gildersleeve. I was raised in a desert, so perhaps I am to be forgiven for not knowing much about how to prepare food from the sea. Or maybe not. I could have learned anyway. You've got to admit, the prospect of becoming an expert at seafood, even if you live near water, is a bit daunting. What season can you eat mussels and not get sick? Which fish are endangered and need to be left alone to replenish? How can you tell if your dinner was caught without endangering dolphins or turtles? Perhaps at one time I could dodge the issue, but with lakes and rivers all around, and the ocean at my doorstep, to not enjoy that bounty seems inexcusable, and just plain wrong. That's why I'm pleased to say that I know a fishmonger who's good people. He's a guy who really knows his stuff, and he's happy to share his knowledge of seafood if you'd care to pay him a visit.
Hello,
Leif.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Legion.
It's been too long.
Yes.
I love this place. You
Thank
got to
you.
get one closer to where I live.
His name is Leif Gildersleeve, and he owns the Flying Fish Company, a retail fish market and oyster bar located inside Providore Fine Foods.
I do a selection of fresh, local seafood. It's all sustainable seafood. So what that means is we don't sell anything that's being overfished or that's getting treated with chemicals. And we only do fresh fish, which means it's never been frozen.
I like Leif.
So these fish show up here on the Oregon coast in the summer times. You catch these guys 40 miles out into the ocean. This boat that I work with is called Hoof and Fin, and I go out and fish with these guys. So I get
really?
to see exactly how they handle them, how they bleed them, how they slush ice them, and really give us the ultimately fresh quality, best
Right.
tuna available. It's called dayboat tuna.
He's the kind of guy who supports small, family-run, local operations. The kind that harvest seafood in ways that don't harm the environment and that sustain fish stocks.
So yeah, so you know, one of the things with quality is you look for the eye, how nice and clear all of these eyes are.
Right, not all gray.
Not all gray, not all cloudy. What we do is we take these, we bring them into the back. We've got a cutting board station back there. We fillet them off, and then we vacuum package them, and then we put them in the fresh case right over here. So customers can just purchase one little fillet of each fish.
His enthusiasm for all things fish and crustacean is infectious, and I really dig his encyclopedic knowledge of how to best prepare the food he sells.
Where are the scallops?
Ooh, scallops are right here. So this is called a dry pack scallop. This is fresh from the East Coast, so they've never been frozen. You see them, they're nice and dry. They're not in that little white liquid that's in the bottom of a lot of grocery store scallops. That liquid is called sodium tripolyphosphate, and it's a preservative. When you buy the scallops at the grocery store, they weigh more. But then you go home and you cook them, and all that water, when you add heat to it, it leaks out into the pan, and then they don't sear up, they just bubble up. And so
I thought that happened to me.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's called wet scallops. So it's an industry standard for the scallop industry.
Right.
So these, because they're a dry pack scallop, you put them in the pan, a super hot pan, smoking hot pan with a little bit of coconut oil or something, and they actually sear up. They brown up and caramelize up on the outside. Got any money?
I was gonna say, making me hungry.
We're going to do a little barbecuing in a park later today, but first, a tour of his shop and an oyster shot is on the agenda. I have to say, I have never, in my life, enjoyed eating an oyster. He says his oysters are going to change all that. Okay, I'm intrigued.
So these are Kumamoto oysters there. This is our mignonette. So that's a champagne vinegar and shallot and pepper mixture.
Sounds good.
So how you eat an oyster is you take a little bit of lemon, squeeze it on there, like that. Take the little bit of mignonette there, stir it up so that you get some of the pepper along the bottom, a little bit of shallot in there, a little bit of mignonette onto each oyster. And take the oyster, go ahead and grab a hold of that one. Yep.
Ready.
Then give me a cheers.
Cheers.
Then we're gonna just stick it right up to our mouth like this,
Uh-huh.
and then tilt it back.
Huh?
Couple chews, and then swallow it down.
That's awesome. Wow.
All right.
That
You
is
like it?
literally, I loved it. That's literally the first oyster I've ever had in my life
Yep.
that I really, really liked.
Yay.
You said
I
you were
got a
gonna do
bell.
it.
I got a bell ringer for that one.
Wow. That was awesome.
All right. Welcome.
I didn't think you could do it.
Welcome to the oyster world.
I'll be damned if he wasn't right. I like his oysters. Quite a bit, actually. My appetite has been whetted. Leaf Gildersleeve's enthusiasm for selling sustainable, environmentally friendly seafood is infectious. Not only that, he's also just a really nice guy. So when he suggested that we should barbecue some of his fish in Laurelhurst Park, he didn't have to twist my arm. To say that Portland loves its parks is a serious understatement. It has, at last count, 146 of them, including Forest Park, with one of the largest urban forest reserves in the country, down to Mill Ends Park, which according to the Guinness Book of Records is the smallest park in the world. And that's Mill Ends Park, not Mills End Park. A lot of people apparently get that wrong. Laurelhurst Park not long after it was created 100 years ago, was declared the most beautiful park on the West Coast by the Pacific Coast Parks Association. And in 2001, it was the first city park ever to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. All I know is, it's a great place to have a pleasant conversation over barbecue. Leif Gildersleeve knows a heck of a lot about fish. His shop, the Flying Fish Company and Oyster Bar, located in Providore Fine Foods, is a testament to the fact that one can make a living selling sustainable seafood. The man is full of surprises and a genuine pleasure to hang out with. Oh yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Leif also sells locally sourced, grass-fed, and pasture-raised meat in his sister shop, the Meatmongers.
So these albacore are frozen up whole on the boat,
Right.
and then they're put in a big shipping container and sent over to China.
Oh.
And in China, they defrost them, fillet them out, and vacuum package them, and freeze them up again. So already, we're doing two things that are bad. We're spending fossil fuels to ship them to China, where
Right.
they say the labor's cheaper. A lot of it's child labor and slave labor.
Sure.
And then the second thing is we're freezing it twice. You're not supposed to freeze things twice.
Right.
Meats, you can get away with it, okay, but seafood is much more sensitive about getting frozen twice.
Right. Now, once they freeze it twice, then what are they doing? They're shipping it back to us
Then
again?
they're shipping it back to us again, but it's a product of China now. So it was an Oregon albacore tuna that was caught off here 40 miles off the Oregon coast, but it went to China to be processed,
Right.
and then it's coming back and sold as Oregon albacore, but yet it's a product of China because it got processed in China. So we're
Right.
wasting a bunch of fossil fuels, supporting child and slave labor,
Right.
child and slave labor,
Right.
and now re-importing a product that is now a product of China.
It's crazy.
Take a second to think about that.
I know.
90% of the seafood we consume in America is imported.
And we have more coastline than any other country in the
That's
world.
right. 80% of that seafood that we consume is from China.
It's whack.
Yeah.
Now, I get the pleasure of tasting a few of his wares, fresh and hot, as he barbecues them over a fire in Laurelhurst Park.
How are the coals looking? Are we ready to
I think we're ready.
we'll roll those
Yep.
out? Because I'm ready for some seafood.
I've got to say, I could think of a lot worse ways to spend an afternoon. Leif is a second-generation fishmonger.
So when I was a young kid, I started vacuum packaging fish and cutting up fish and doing all that sort of fun stuff and selling at our retail market. So I've been doing fish for my whole life.
In addition to running his store, he's a very proactive advocate for creating sustainable, environmentally friendly national fisheries policy.
Oh, we all know that our oceans are at a maximum capacity of what we can harvest from them. So what that means when it comes to farm-raised fish is because we have such a high population and such demand on wild stocks, we have to learn how to farm-raise fish, but farm-raise them properly.
Right.
So without the antibiotics and the hormones and that sort of thing. So that's really important. So if I'm going to sell a farm-raised product, I'm going to go make sure that farm is doing the right
Right.
things and make sure it's a sustainable product. So with that being said, the shrimp topic comes up. These shrimp right here are a wild USA shrimp. They're from the Gulf, from Louisiana. And the benefit of the wild USA shrimp are that they're not a farm-raised shrimp from Thailand. They're in water that are tainted waters.
Sure.
You know, I mean, they're raising these all sorts of different fish and shrimp on like the Mekong River.
Yeah.
And that stuff and there's sewer in that water, and it's just gross stuff. Even with these wild USA shrimp, 90+ % of the market of these shrimp are treated with sodium bisulfate or sodium tripolyphosphate. The same thing that I mentioned in the scallops back at the shop.
That doesn't sound very good. Delicious.
No, yeah, when those words get so long, you can imagine those aren't really good for your
Right,
belly, right?
right.
So those beneficial bacteria that are grown in our stomachs. So what these preservatives do is they make sure that the outside of the shrimp don't get browned up, or the heads don't turn black, or that the scallops retain moisture. So at the grocery store, they charge you more money for them, but then that moisture goes away once you cook them. So it's all these things that have happened in our food industry in this day and age that are really hurting us internally. We've got so separated from from our food source.
Sure.
People don't know how to kill a chicken and pluck a chicken
Sure.
and to do that, nor do they want to.
Right.
They don't want to know that beef has
Hormones in
fat,
it
or,
and- yeah.
or just even the processing of it, of
Sure.
like taking it home and getting a bigger piece of meat, maybe directly from a farmer, and getting adventurous and cooking a new ossobuco or
Sure.
oxtail or something that you've never done before. Because guess what? That farmer has to harvest the whole cow.
Yeah.
And where's the rest of the pieces going to go outside
Hot
of the
dogs.
New York and the ribeye? Yeah, some of it.
You know?
Yeah. Wild Atlantic salmon is extinct. There are no very little wild Atlantic salmon anymore.
Brought to extinction by overfishing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. As along with most of the species of fish on the East Coast.
Right.
They're now taking, to start with, a genetically modified corn-based food,
Right.
Or soy-based food, and then putting food coloring in it, and overstocking the heck out of the densities in the fish ponds or in the fish pens where they grow these Atlantic salmon, and that's where you get your majority of your grocery store salmon. Is
None of that can
all
be good.
Atlantic salmon. Of course not. I go to Washington, D.C. and talk with our congressmen and our senators about fisheries policy to make sure that they're aware that we're not okay with that.
Right.
And that the consumers here in Portland do care about that.
Sure.
And I'm the voice for the consumers. I'm the voice for the seafood industry to let them know where we stand on that, and where my passion is making sure that the oceans are protected for future generations. And
Oh, boy. Cheers to that.
cheers to that.
I highly recommend paying him a visit at his shop. If you do, you'll walk away with some great seafood, and probably having learned something really cool as well.
Again, when the seafood's this good, you don't got to throw a lot of sauces on it and
Nope.
spices. Wow.
Nope.
Amazing. Final question I have for you is, can we do this like once a week?
Yep. For the right amount of money.
There's no promise won't stay kept. No lie won't stay told. No